Imagine building your life with someone you love, only for them to walk away and leave you with nothing. But instead of falling apart, you rise, you grow, and you show them who you really are. That's exactly what Naima did in today's story. And trust me, you won't want to miss how it all unfolds. Before we dive in though, I want to hear from you. Where are you chatting from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and let's see how far this story reaches around the world. All right, now get comfy, because this one is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. Let's jump right into the story of Naima and Daniel. Naima met Daniel on a rainy evening in a small, dimly lit cafe on the outskirts of the city. She had just finished a grueling double shift at the local diner, her feet aching from standing all day. Daniel was sitting alone, scribbling furiously in a worn-out notebook, his coffee untouched and cold. Something about the intensity in his eyes drew her in. "Mind if I sit here?" she asked, motioning to the empty seat across from him. He looked up, startled, then smiled. "Of course, I was just..." He hesitated, closing the notebook. "Planning my future, I guess." That night, they talked for hours. Daniel spoke of his dream to own a real estate company, to build something from the ground up, to be more than just another struggling man in the city. Naima listened intently, fascinated by his passion. She had never met anyone who believed in themselves so much despite having so little. At that moment, she decided to believe in him too. They started their journey together in a cramped one-bedroom apartment with peeling wallpaper and a leaky faucet. Daniel worked as a junior real estate agent, barely making enough to cover rent. Naima, determined to support his dream, took on 2 jobs, one as a waitress during the day and another as a cashier at a convenience store at night. Every spare dollar she earned, she handed to Daniel. "Use this for your business," she would say, pressing a few crumpled bills into his hands. "Print flyers, pay for meetings, whatever you need. But Naima, this is your hard-earned money. You need it too," Daniel would protest. She would only shake her head with a smile. "My dream is to see yours come true." It wasn't easy. There were nights when she came home exhausted, her body sore and her spirits low. There were months when they barely had enough money for food. But she never complained. Whenever Daniel felt like giving up, she reminded him why they started. "I know it's hard," she told him one night as they lay on their mattress on the floor, the city lights flickering through the window. "But you're meant for something great. I believe in you." After years of struggle, Daniel finally got his first big deal, a small commercial property that earned him a decent commission. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Encouraged by the success, Naima suggested he start his own real estate firm. "I don't have the money for that," he sighed, rubbing his temples. "But we can find a way," she insisted. Naima sold her mother's gold bracelet, the only heirloom she had left. She also withdrew all her savings and borrowed money from friends. Every cent went into launching Daniel & Co. Realty. She designed the company's logo, built its website, and even took calls pretending to be his secretary. The business was slow at first, but Naima never let Daniel lose hope. She walked the streets handing out business cards, researched the market trends, and encouraged him to network with the right people. "I don't think I can do this without you," Daniel admitted one night, looking at her with admiration. "Then it's a good thing I'm not going anywhere," she replied, squeezing his hand. Despite the struggle, Naima and Daniel were deeply in love. They celebrated small victories with cheap takeout, found joy in simple walks, and dreamed of a future where they wouldn't have to worry about money. One winter when Daniel fell sick with the flu, Naima called in sick from work to take care of him. She made him soup, read to him, and kept him warm under layers of blankets. "You should be at work," he mumbled through his fever. "And leave you to suffer alone? Never," she replied, brushing his damp hair from his forehead. She loved him fiercely, with a devotion that knew no limits. And in those moments, Daniel seemed to love her just as much. After 4 years of struggle, Daniel's company finally took off. He landed a major client who trusted him with a multi-million-dollar property deal. With that one transaction, his reputation skyrocketed. More deals followed. Investors took notice. Soon, they moved into a better apartment, then a townhouse, then a lavish penthouse in the city. Naima was ecstatic. She had sacrificed everything to see Daniel succeed, and now their dreams were finally coming true. "You did it," she told him one night as they stood on the balcony, looking over the city skyline. "We did it," he corrected, wrapping an arm around her waist. "I couldn't have done this without you, Naima." She believed him. She had no reason not to, but she didn't know that success would change everything. Daniel's business exploded into success in a way neither he nor Naima could have ever imagined. The tiny real estate firm that had once operated out of a cluttered office with a single desk and a used computer was now a thriving empire. He had gone from barely scraping by to closing million-dollar deals. The transition from their old life to their new one was both exhilarating and overwhelming. Naima couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as she watched Daniel grow into the man he'd always dreamed of becoming. But with success came something Naima couldn't have predicted: distance. At first, it was small enough that Naima dismissed it as just a part of their new life. Daniel became increasingly busy, working late nights at the office, attending lavish parties, and meeting with high-powered executives. He didn't need her the way he once did. Their evenings, once spent talking about their future, slowly turned into quiet dinners, where Daniel was more focused on his phone than on her. He didn't ask her opinion about business matters as he once did. Instead, he made decisions on his own, handling everything with an air of authority that felt foreign to Naima. At the same time, she started to see subtle signs of a change in him. The man who had once worn secondhand suits now sported designer clothes. His shoes were polished to perfection, and his car, a modest sedan, was replaced by a sleek, expensive sports car. His new friends were all wealthy, successful people who seemed to look down on Naima's humble background. She tried to fit into this new world, accompanying him to galas and corporate events, but it felt alien to her. The conversations, the laughter, the extravagant lifestyles, none of it felt like home. "You've changed," Naima said one evening, watching Daniel sip his wine and talk about his latest investment. Daniel glanced at her, his face unreadable. "I've had to. The business requires it. But you don't talk to me like you used to. You don't need me the way you did before." He shrugged, a brief flicker of something in his eyes that she couldn't quite place. "I still need you, just in different ways now." She felt a pang of confusion and hurt. She had always been his partner, the one who stood by him through the struggles, the one who had helped him when no one else believed in him. Why did he suddenly seem so far away? A new woman in his life, things took a sharper turn when he met Camilla. She was the daughter of a wealthy business mogul, a socialite who had never known a day of struggle in her life. Naima first saw her at a charity gala Daniel insisted they attend. Camilla was a vision of poise and grace, wearing a silver gown that sparkled under the chandeliers. Her blonde hair cascaded down her back in perfect waves, and she moved through the crowd like she belonged to a different world, a world that Naima had never been a part of. Naima didn't think much of it at first. Daniel had introduced her to many people over the years, and most of them were just acquaintances. But Camilla was different. She was charming, with a sharp wit and an effortless elegance that seemed to captivate everyone in the room, including Daniel. Naima watched as the two of them conversed, their voices hushed, their laughter genuine. Something in her chest tightened, a feeling she couldn't quite explain. It wasn't jealousy, at least not at first. It was more a sense of displacement, of being left behind in a world that was growing increasingly distant from her own. In the weeks that followed, Daniel's relationship with Camilla deepened. He started to invite her to business meetings. And Naima noticed that Camilla had a way of handling people, of charming them into believing her every word. She was everything Naima wasn't, polished, poised, and surrounded by wealth. When Naima confronted Daniel about it, he brushed her concerns aside. "Camilla's just a business associate," he said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "She's good for networking. You know how important these connections are." But Naima didn't buy it. She could see the way Daniel's eyes lingered on Camilla, the way he smiled at her, the way he seemed more animated in her presence. Naima had worked so hard for this life, sacrificed so much, and now it seemed like all of it was slipping through her fingers. As Daniel's relationship with Camilla flourished, Naima found herself drifting further into the background. Their once vibrant love was now a memory, a ghost of what it had been. Daniel began spending more time away from home, traveling for business or attending glamorous parties. Naima couldn't keep up with his new lifestyle, and every attempt to reinsert herself into his world was met with subtle indifference. One night, when Daniel came home late after a business dinner, Naima was waiting for him in their spacious penthouse. She had just finished dinner alone, something that had become all too common, and was sitting on the couch when he entered, his suit jacket discarded and his tie loosened. "How was the dinner?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Fine. Business stuff," he muttered, barely looking at her as he poured himself a drink. Naima stood up, unable to hide the hurt anymore. "Daniel, I need you to look at me. You've been pulling away from me for months. I don't know who you are anymore." Daniel paused, his back to her. For a long moment, there was silence in the room, thick with unspoken words. Finally, he turned around, his expression unreadable. "You don't get it, Naima," he said softly, almost as if he were speaking to a stranger. "I'm not the same person I was when we met, and I don't think I can go back to being that person." Her heart dropped. "What does that mean?" "It means we're growing apart," he said, his voice flat. "You and I, we've outgrown each other." Naima stood frozen, the weight of his words crashing over her. She had built this life with him. She had given up everything for him. And now he was telling her they had outgrown each other? He turned away again, taking a long gulp of his drink. And just like that, the distance between them grew wider. A few weeks later, Daniel asked for a divorce. "It's not you, Naima. I just think we need different things now. I need to focus on my business. And you, well, you deserve someone who can give you more than I can." Naima was devastated. She had spent so many years building a future with him, sacrificing her dreams, her time, her heart, and now he was throwing it all away for a life that didn't need her. She begged him to reconsider, but Daniel was resolute. He was already making plans to marry Camilla, and nothing Naima said could change his mind. As she stood in their penthouse, watching Daniel pack his things, she felt the crushing weight of betrayal. All her sacrifices, all the years of love and devotion, had meant nothing. And just like that, the man she had given everything to walked out of her life, leaving her with nothing. Naima's heart ached in the weeks that followed Daniel's departure. The pain of losing him was not just in the end of their relationship, but in the way he had abandoned everything they had built together. All the nights she had worked tirelessly, the sacrifices she had made, the dreams they had shared, it all seemed meaningless now. And the most crushing blow of all was how easily he had moved on to someone else. Camilla was everything Naima was not. Young, beautiful, and with a pedigree that screamed power and wealth. Daniel had traded their shared history for a future that was shiny and new, but ultimately hollow. In the first few months after the divorce, Naima let herself mourn. She took long walks in the park to clear her mind, surrounded herself with the few friends she had left, and tried to regain a sense of normalcy in a life that felt like it had been turned upside down. But deep inside, there was a fire that refused to be extinguished. She was not going to let this define her. She had come so far, and she wasn't going to lose herself now. Naima spent the next few months reflecting on everything she had learned while helping Daniel build his empire. She had always been his silent partner, managing the administrative side, making the phone calls, handling the negotiations, and doing the legwork. She realized that the skills she had honed were valuable, and more than enough to make her succeed on her own. With quiet determination, Naima pulled herself together and began making plans. She tapped into the knowledge she had gained in real estate and investments. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, she took action. She opened her own company, a real estate agency that would cater to those looking for affordable but quality housing in up-and-coming neighborhoods. She used her connections from her time working with Daniel to secure the right deals, but this time, she was doing it all for herself. At first, the road was tough. Naima had no illusions. She knew it would take time to establish herself in the competitive market. But she had one thing many others didn't: resilience. She had learned from the best and the worst. Every setback was a lesson, She would find ways to improve and push through the difficult times. Her first few deals were modest, but each one marked a victory. She carefully invested in properties in growing neighborhoods, renovated them on a tight budget, and turned them into homes that people could be proud of. Slowly but surely, Naima's reputation grew. Her attention to detail, her integrity, and her fierce drive set her apart from others in the industry. One day, while reviewing some paperwork in her new office, Naima received a call that would change everything. It was a potential investor who had been referred to her by one of her previous clients. The investor was looking to partner with her on a large-scale development project, a real estate venture worth millions. This was her chance. It was a leap, and she knew it. But she also knew that she had everything it took to make it work. She signed the contract and began assembling a team of architects, engineers, and contractors to bring her vision to life. The project became a turning point for Naima, not just in terms of financial success, but also in her growing sense of empowerment. She was no longer the woman who had worked behind the scenes. She was the one calling the shots. Meanwhile, Daniel's life was unraveling in ways he couldn't have predicted. At first, everything seemed perfect. Camilla had settled into his world with ease, taking her place beside him at business meetings and social events. She was everything he had wanted. Beautiful, charming, and willing to indulge his every desire. But what Daniel hadn't realized was that Camilla was nothing like Naima. She didn't have the same loyalty, the same work ethic, the same heart. Naima had always worked hard to protect Daniel's business, making smart decisions and building it from the ground up. But Camilla had no interest in maintaining what Daniel had worked for. She was more interested in spending his money and enjoying the luxuries that came with being married to a wealthy man. At first, it was small things. Camilla insisted on expensive vacations, buying designer clothes and jewelry at the expense of their financial stability. Daniel, eager to please, gave in to her every whim. But soon, things began to spiral. Camilla encouraged reckless investments, convincing Daniel to put more money into ventures that lacked substance. She threw lavish parties, drained their accounts, and manipulated Daniel into signing over assets that he didn't fully understand. Soon enough, Daniel's business was in disarray. He had spent so much time trying to please Camilla and keep up with her extravagant demands that he lost sight of what made his empire successful in the first place. He neglected the very fundamentals that had brought him wealth and status. The projects faltered. Investors pulled out. Banks started to call in loans. In less than 3 years, Daniel's empire collapsed. His real estate holdings were sold off. His penthouse was foreclosed, and his once thriving company crumbled into nothing. Worse still, Camilla, ever the opportunist, abandoned him for a new, richer man, leaving Daniel destitute and alone. One afternoon, as Daniel walked through the empty halls of his now abandoned office, he received a call from a former business associate who had heard about his fall from grace. The conversation was brief, but the message was clear. Naima was thriving. Naima had become a force in the real estate market, building an empire of her own, one that was growing faster than Daniel could ever have imagined. She was everything he had lost, everything he had thrown away in pursuit of fleeting pleasures. The regret hit him like a tidal wave. He had let the woman who truly believed in him slip away, and in doing so, he had destroyed everything. For the first time, Daniel understood the weight of his actions. He had traded loyalty for luxury, love for status, and in the process, he had lost it all. He realized that he had never truly appreciated Naima for the powerhouse she was. She had been the steady hand that guided him, and without her, he was nothing. As Daniel's life fell apart, Naima soared. She had rebuilt herself from the ground up, stronger, smarter, and more successful than ever before. Her real estate company was flourishing, and she had become one of the most respected women in the industry. Her name was synonymous with integrity and hard work, and she was finally enjoying the rewards of everything she had sacrificed. One evening, as Naima sat in her penthouse now, looking over the city, she felt a quiet sense of peace. She had come so far, and while the journey had been painful, it had shaped her to someone unrecognizable from the woman who had once been by Daniel's side. She was no longer defined by him, by their past, or by what they had built together. She had built something far more meaningful on her own, and it was hers, completely and utterly. And in the end, Naima had learned the most valuable lesson of all. The only person who could truly build her empire was herself. Time passed and Naima continued to grow her empire with unmatched grace and tenacity. She became a symbol of success, not just in real estate, but in business as a whole. Her firm was known for its ethical practices, its dedication to sustainable development, and its commitment to making neighborhoods better for everyone, not just the wealthy elite. She had built something that was not just profitable, but meaningful. As Naima thrived, Daniel's life only worsened. He had tried to rebuild, but every attempt was met with failure. He was forced to sell off what little was left of his assets to cover his mounting debts. No one wanted to partner with him anymore, not after his disastrous marriage to Camilla and the way he had let his empire crumble. His former associates turned their backs on him, and the luxurious life he had once enjoyed seemed like a distant memory. He moved into a modest apartment, far from the lavish penthouse he had once called home. It was on one of those quiet, lonely nights when Daniel stumbled upon an article in a business magazine. It was a feature on Naima, a profile of how she had turned her life around after the divorce and built a real estate empire of her own. The headline read, "Naima Carter, from heartbreak to powerhouse." Daniel couldn't look away. There she was, standing in front of a sleek new building her company had just completed, looking confident, poised, and utterly unbothered by the wreckage he had left behind. He felt a twinge of regret deep in his gut, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time. He had thrown away a woman who had stood by him, who had worked tirelessly for their shared dream, only to watch her rise while he sank into ruin. The realization hit him hard. He had traded Naima's loyalty for Camilla's fleeting charm and had paid the price for it. Unable to bear the sting of the article any longer, Daniel decided to visit Naima's office. He hadn't spoken to her since the divorce, and the thought of seeing her again made his stomach turn. But something inside him told him that he needed to face her, to apologize for everything he had done and acknowledge the mistakes he had made. When he arrived at Naima's building, he was immediately struck by the contrast between her success and his failure. Her company's headquarters was sleek and modern, the kind of place that oozed confidence and power. As he walked through the polished glass doors, the receptionist greeted him with a professional smile. "I'd like to speak with Miss Carter," Daniel said, his voice shaking slightly. The receptionist gave him a curious look, but nodded. "I'll let her know you're here." A few minutes later, Naima appeared in the lobby. She was dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, her hair pulled back into a neat ponytail. Her eyes flickered with surprise when she saw him, but she quickly masked her emotions with a polite smile. "Daniel," she said, her voice neutral, "what brings you here?" He felt a knot tighten in his chest, but he gathered the courage to speak. "Naima, I know I have no right to ask this of you, but I need to say something." Naima raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. "I'm listening." Daniel faltered, his voice catching in his throat. "I messed up. I know I betrayed you. I know I threw away everything we built together. And for that, I am so sorry. I was blinded by ambition and pride, and I didn't appreciate you the way I should have. I see now that you were the one who believed in me, who helped me succeed, and I threw all of that away." Naima's face softened for a brief moment, but she quickly regained her composure. She crossed her arms, tilting her head slightly. "You're right," she said quietly. "You did betray me, and for a long time, I thought that would destroy me, but it didn't." She took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "I built something for myself. I learned to value my worth, and I learned that I don't need you or anyone else to define my success." Daniel's heart sank as he realized that she had moved on, not just from the pain he had caused. He wanted to say more, to beg for another chance, but the truth was undeniable. He had lost her, and he had no one to blame but himself. "I'm proud of you," Daniel said, his voice tinged with regret. "You've become everything I could never have been without you, and I'll never be able to make up for what I did to you." Naima gave him a small, bittersweet smile. "You've learned the hard way, Daniel, but that's your lesson to carry." I've moved on. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just grateful. Grateful that I was able to find myself after everything you took away from me." There was a long pause, and Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment he had been dreading for years. The moment when he realized that everything he had lost was irreplaceable. A few months later, Naima stood at the grand opening of her newest project, a luxury apartment complex that would be the crowning jewel of her company. As she greeted guests and posed for photos, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and satisfaction. She had come so far, and everything she had achieved was built on her own hard work and determination. In the distance, she saw Daniel standing by the entrance, looking out of place in his worn suit. He watched her with a quiet, almost wistful expression. For a moment, their eyes met across the room. There was no anger, no resentment, just a quiet understanding. He was no longer the man she had loved, and she was no longer the woman who had clung to him. They had both moved on. As the night wore on, Naima felt at peace. She had survived the storm, rebuilt herself, and created a life that was truly her own. She was not defined by her past, not by the man who had abandoned her, but by the woman she had become. And as she stood at the top of her success, she knew that the sweetest victory was not in the riches she had accumulated, but in the strength and self-worth she had found within herself. She had built this life, and no one, least of all Daniel, could take that away from her. And there you have it, Naima's journey from heartbreak to unstoppable success, and Daniel's downfall as a result of his own choices. It's a powerful reminder that when we invest in ourselves, no one can take our worth away. Naima showed us that strength lies within, and sometimes the best revenge is living your life to the fullest. Cut to a shot of Naima's success in the story, her empire flourishing. Now, I want to know your thoughts. What do you think of Naima's rise and Daniel's fall? Have you ever experienced something similar, or have any personal stories of turning adversity into triumph? Let us know in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more epic tales of triumph, betrayal, and redemption, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss a new video. And don't forget, tell us where you're chatting from. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, your story isn't over yet. Keep going.